What's up guys, this is Ray and today we'll be talking about the 1973 Japanese movie Japan Sinks. Japan Sinks, I've seen it listed as other names while doing Google searches. I've seen it listed as Tidal Wave, I've seen it listed as the Submersion of Japan, but I'm just going to simplify it as Japan Sinks because I think that's probably the most common name, at least that's the name that I was introduced to it as. And this is not the remake that was released in the early 2000s, and this is not a talk about the upcoming Netflix anime series, which is directed by Yuasa Masaaki, of which I definitely do want to check just because I'm a big Yuasa fan. But yeah, this is of the original 1970 movie based off the novel originally written by Komatsu Sakyo. And Komatsu Sakyo is, he's written a few sci-fi novels, some of which have been adapted into movies in the past. One of which that comes to mind is Virus, The Day of Resurrection, which was a pretty epic film. If you haven't checked it out, definitely check that one out. But before we dive into this review, if you guys are new to Eiga-Man Ray, I upload reviews and discussions of Japanese movies every chance that I get. So if you're new to the channel and you dig the content, you can help support this channel by checking out other videos featured here and also by subscribing. So now on to the review. The story of Japan Sinks, I think simply put, it's about Japan's inevitable future of succumbing to giant earthquakes and tidal waves and ultimately sinking below the ocean waves. It's about these scientists, first they're on a submarine mission and they discover that there's a lot of seismic activity that's happening in Japan and that it's eventually going to lead to catastrophes. So what this does is it leads to this chain of events in which Japan, the government, the people, and scientists, they have to plan what to do so that way Japan can survive this catastrophe. So that's the gist of the story. It sounds kind of simple, but there's a lot of stuff that actually happens within the story of this movie. So let's dive into that. When it comes to the positives of the movie, well, first of all, I'm a huge tokusatsu fan. This movie is a tokusatsu movie. It utilizes a lot of special effects which are traditionally used in the genre, anything from using miniatures. That's how they perform a lot of these set pieces that involve the disasters destroying the city. And when you think of tokusatsu, especially of ones around this genre, I think mainly you would think about Godzilla movies, which were released by the time, maybe Gamera. But this movie doesn't feature any giant monsters, but this does feature a lot of really good work when it comes to showing the miniatures getting destroyed by natural disasters, as well as superimposing real actors and just real settings with these miniature sets. When it comes to the disasters in this movie, there aren't a whole lot of scenes, to be honest, but whenever those scenes happen, it is epic and it's very frightening to watch. Even though everything are miniatures, I still think, especially when you compare it to movies around the time when all you have for tokusatsu was like giant monster movies and even like superhero movies. But to see the techniques utilized in this genre, utilized for a disaster movie, and the way it's mixed in, it's fantastic. So needless to say, there is a lot of buildup between each scene of disaster. So if you're looking for a scene which is like typical Hollywood blockbuster, where you just see nothing but destruction, you might be disappointed in this movie. Rather than focus solely on the destruction, that's the scenes of destruction in this movie, this movie features a lot of social commentary, a lot of questions of how what could possibly happen if Japan were to sink under the water. How would the people react? What kind of planning would the government take? Also, how would it affect the world? How would the world react to some of these drastic and extreme plans that Japan is trying to put forward? Like, without spoiling too much of the kind of discussions that happen in the movie, some of the plans that they present are, what if we have all the Japanese people migrate to other countries and resettle? And of course, the kind of reactions from these countries to these kinds of decisions. A lot of the scenes that involve all these discussions actually do mix a lot of explanations of the science that's going on, the science behind what's happening behind the sinking of Japan. And I think the science, I'm not sure how accurate it is, but it does sound really convincing. And everything really blends well together to create a lot of tension. There is, even though a lot of the scenes involve, between each scene of disaster, composed of a lot of talking, this movie does a great job at building up tension and building up fear and building up that kind of panic. And then when things start to hit the fan, you really feel the fear, you really feel the panic, because if any of you guys know the kind of disasters that happen in Japan, earthquakes are pretty common, tsunamis are not uncommon, and to see everything, all those kinds of fears present in this movie and to see the way people react to it, it's kind of scary. So you watch this movie for great sci-fi, for great drama, for great build-up, and for a big payoff. But when it comes to the negatives of Japan Sinks, I gotta say I wasn't really feeling the cast of characters overall. There were a few standout performances, a few standout characters, but I think for the most part they introduced so many characters in the story that it's kind of a bit difficult to remember who's who, unless you're fans of some of the actors who are performing in the story. Like, I'm a fan of Fujioka Hiroshi, who played, I guess he was kind of the main character, at least from the start. He was like the kind of a young, like handsome dude that he put at the center of the story. But I know him because he's Kamen Rider Ichigo. There are some characters who they introduce in large roles in the beginning and you don't see them for lengths of time throughout the story, and they pop up towards the end. You know, there's probably one or two characters that fit that bill, but for the most part, it's kind of difficult to keep track of all the characters with the amount of people they thrust into this movie. And I guess it's kind of understandable because for a story of this scale, you can't keep it to a small cast. I feel like it deserves to have a big cast, but the drawback is it's hard to remember who's who. And the result of that is not many characters are memorable. I guess another negative is, it doesn't really affect me personally because I didn't watch it, but I guess there was an early North American release that kind of remixed the movie a bit in the same way they remixed the old Godzilla movie, where they introduced Western actors and superimposed them into the story. From what I understand, they did that with this movie too. That wasn't the version I've watched. I watched the original Japanese cut, and so I haven't actually seen that, but from what I understand, that version of the movie is horrible. So if you have the chance, definitely check out the original cut. But overall, what do I have to say about Japan Sinks? I enjoyed it. It definitely has a classic science fiction kind of vibe. And like I said, if you are looking for a disaster movie which focuses mainly on the disasters and some kind of action drama, you won't exactly find that in this movie. You'll find a lot of really deep issues explored, a lot of social commentary, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of big what if questions, and I think, I'm not sure if it's entirely possible that a disaster can strike Japan so big that it sinks it under the waves, but this movie has a lot of interesting questions that that are explored, I think, really well. And this story, the original novel, is big enough to not only warrant this adaptation of the book, but also a remake and also an upcoming anime series directed by one of the big names in anime. And so that being said, the cultural impact of Japan Sinks, I think it shouldn't be left overlooked. So needless to say, you should definitely check it out. But anyways, yes, those are my thoughts on Japan Sinks. What did you guys think? Please let me know in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Follow me and all the social media channels. And if you really dig my content, please know you can support Eiga-Man Ray by hitting that notification bell so you can be notified every time I upload a new video, and also check out my Patreon page so you can know how to further support the channel. And yes, that's about it for me, guys. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much to my patrons over Patreon for supporting this channel and everything that I do. And I'll catch you all again in the next video. Take it easy.